What's up, brother?
All right, happy Monday, brother. Welcome back to another TDRS, and it's a good Monday.
Welcome, everybody.
Listen, now I would be remiss to not start off the show. It's the first day of school still for a lot of schools across the nation, and I think it's so befitting. This person really inspired us. Told us that we have to believe that the children are our future.
That's right.
And I know my students
I already know who you're talking about now.
They already enjoy hearing this amazing voice every other day. I try not to give them too much. But today is Whitney Houston's birthday. And so I wanted to just start off by giving her a shout out as she still continues to inspire a generation of singers and teachers who still use that song in their classroom. So happy first day of school for those who are starting back with their families. And as you guys can noticeably see, that the DJ, the queen of this show, our sister Tanisha, is not on. However, she will be returning. She's just been on a little break, and so she will be returning, but we do miss her, and we can't wait till she gets back. So
jet setting everywhere.
Yeah, she just has been on the move, and that's life, right? It'll happen to all of us, and so I'm just excited to have her back on with us. But as we go ahead and kick off today's show, how have you been, and what's up? What's the tea? What's new?
I was in Tulsa yesterday. Today I'm back here in Atlanta, getting ready to continue building the business. I see Maritza out there. Everybody, if you're watching, please feel free to comment. If you want to get your little few minutes of fame, just say hello, and we'll pop you out on the screen at the bottom. But yeah, so I'm happy to be back. Woke up early this morning. I went to the chiropractor, got my foot adjusted. I hurt my ankle. I went and played tennis, and I ended up tweaking my ankle, so I had to go to the chiropractor so she could get it adjusted. But are we ready for the tea? Because I definitely got some tea.
Yeah, that everyone knows. If you haven't been chiming into our show, the backstage graphics marketing department, they have been on it with just making us stellar. And so we get ready to go to the tea, y'all, so we can go on these hot topics and then get into our conversation for today.
All right. All right, so for the tea, the closing ceremonies of the 2020/2021 Tokyo Olympics were yesterday. The U.S. ended with an impressive medal count of 113. Notably, over half of U.S. medals were earned by women. And moreover, a lot of people are still upset that Russia, performing under Russian Olympic Committee, ROC, still got to compete while Shakira Richardson stayed home. And remember, the Olympic Committee banned Russia from performing in the Tokyo Olympics due to doping, violating doping policies. So that's the first T. Now, the second T is the great debate has begun in some parent circles, not sure how many Black-friendly groups, but around how often to bathe your kids. So this hot topic convo, of course, comes after Ashton Kutcher and Miley Kunis revealed they don't bathe their children daily. And on last Friday, The View, Kristen Bale said, quote, "I wait for the stink to wash my kids." So just all I know is I got a bath every single day. There was no way that I was going to even be able to get into some clean sheets without taking a bath or a shower.
Yeah, but here's the reality, right? Sometimes, especially with teenagers, it could be hit or miss. Now, being in the band, playing sports, recreation, all of that, there were some days being one of the water boys, hustling, selling water. Like there were some days I would just come home as a teenager and would be dog tired, right? And it would be like, okay, first thing in the morning, I'm getting up early, I'm gonna take me a full shower, bath, whatever it is. Now, before I get in that bed, I may do Now, let me think of the proper term that I would use on the podcast, but I may do like a wipe off, right? Now old school would say you do a whole bath. So, if that offends anyone, you ain't grow up in the South, or you ain't grow up with some, some seniors and some elders, but, it would just be a quick wipe off, right? And then it was like getting to bed. But I think this is a different dynamic. This is like going to play tennis, being outside with the natural elements, having a good time, going, dancing, just doing whatever you want to do, and then getting into bed. And then the next day doing it all over again. And you haven't really touched soap and water in, some hot places, not just hot topics, but some hot places. So I think that may be a little bit different.
You said some hot places.
Yeah, those hot spots. Those hot spots. The kids know. When we say hot spots, they know, like, okay, let me make sure I call home and say I need, A, B, and C. Or
Tara Brown said that's what her mama called them hot spots too. Now, all I know is that, like, living in Chicago, well, I don't know, if Tanisha was here, she'd probably be like, I'm gonna have to push back on that, because it definitely gets hot in the summertime in Chicago, but we're in Georgia, and all I know is that humidity is high as hell, and that those hot spots are going to be drizzling and dripping and funky by the end of the day. So I hope that y'all are watching y'all kids out there, because if I had them running around my house, we would definitely be cleaned up before we get into the bed every single night.
Not to spend so much time on this, I'm laughing only because it is vitally important, especially in the pandemic, that children are as clean as possible going into schools. We have to, here's a reality. Some schools have shorter staff members present because COVID-19 is still real. So if it's impacting the staff, it's a little bit harder to keep buildings that are occupying a lot of people, especially children, clean if you don't have 100% staff. And so it's just something to be mindful of, that you want your children to be clean, you want them to be protected, and you just you want to smell good. I just want to put that out there. You want body hygiene is important, especially when you're working around other people. Now, if you get the luxury of being at home and it's you and your spouse, or you and your your pets, or you and your loved one, and they don't really care how you smell, and you don't care how you smell, then hey, that's your autonomy. But when you go into public spaces around other people, hygiene is very important.
Definitely, especially if you're traveling.
You had one more hot topic before we get into some real.
That was it.
This is gonna steam us.
Yeah, so that was it. Like, the whole issue with Sha'Carri Richardson, Sha'Carri Richardson not being able to compete in the Olympics when we still have Russians competing in the Olympics. It's really bizarre. Not to mention, like, China has these human rights violations going on, and some of the those out there giving commentary are bringing it up. Like, we have people that are doping. We have people that are nations that are clearly violating people's human rights. Nevertheless, Sha'Carri Richardson smoked some weed and she can't compete in the Olympics. It's absolutely still bizarre.
Well, I mean, I think that it's typical of their character. And I feel like the Olympics has been, on board with racism and racial injustice for as long as we can remember.
Right.
And I go back to the activists in the 60s who, were taking a stand against, brutality against Black people. And that's really where Black Lives Matter, started in that moment, in that movement. And so the Olympics needs to be held accountable just like every other institution, entity, system, not just in America, but across the world, because racism is definitely a thing and it shows up in history.
The other global pandemic, yeah.
Yeah, I want to get to this last topic that is some real piping hot tea before we bring our sisters on in the conversation today. In the city of Atlanta, Wakanda, the Black Mecca, the city that is too busy to hate, the home of the civil rights movement. I'm from Atlanta, so I'm saying all of these things because I also love to remind us that Atlanta is so not far removed from racism. Just last week, the first week of school, a Black parent, a Black mother, shout out to Black women who are always on the front line, fighting for us, advocating for us, exposing the wrongs that happen to our staff members in schools, and our children. For those who are not aware, Maryland Elementary School is an elementary school here in the city of Atlanta that is in Buckhead. It's in the upper echelon, right? And a Black mother filed a complaint against the elementary school, basically saying after she talked with the principal, who informed her that all of the Black children in the school would be housed in 2 classrooms and have 2 classes separate from all of the other students. And so the white students, if you were biracial, and you didn't pass, I'm sorry, but you were going to be separated from your siblings. And I'm pausing only to say that as a Black mother and a Black father, I know that they had to be furious around that. But they also spoke in the news report that the other Black parents and the white parents in their community would have equally been upset. And I cannot even believe that I would have to, I don't know if this is piping hot tea or this is just like hot water being thrown in our faces. In 2021, a principal who was recommended by leadership, approved by the school board, segregated Black students from their peers in their elementary school after we have just come out of a heavy lift of trying to get back to some normalcy in doing school. And now this is my first time going back to school in a year and a half. And when I come in, I'm being ushered, and this is one of the top schools in Atlanta public schools. I'm being ushered into an area that is for Blacks only.
So did the principal try to like justify the reason for segregating the students, or?
So it's very interesting. The Atlanta Board of Education, the Atlanta public school system put out a statement very quickly, of course, damage control. This is our policy. We don't condone this. We'll definitely be following our process and procedure that is, of course, outlined in the manual for Atlanta public schools, which the superintendent would lead. But here's the reality. We started off school by allowing, and this is not just one school. Let's just be very clear, everyone listening and those who will watch this as the time passes. If you only believe this is happening in one school, baby, you are mistaken. I would go into how the formula of what they do to actually get this done. And we'll touch on this a little bit when we talk about federal programs.
Brother, I have to man, I know we got to get going because we have some incredible guests that are getting ready to come on, but I got to pop out one more hot topic. So as many of y'all know that are out there watching, I'm a part of the National Parents Union. I'm actually the founding delegate for the Southern region. And in one of our discussions, we were talking about returning back to school. So Puerto Rico, although it's not a state, it's a territory, but one of our delegates lives there, and she was actually explaining to us that there was a school there that was planning to separate kids who either had households with vaccinations and those who didn't, and then segregate them by color. As far as like, you're going to wear a red shirt if you don't have a shot, or if you haven't had a COVID test. And then if you don't have this red shirt on, then you're wearing like your regular uniform or another different shirt. Wow. So like, I mean, man, that is just, I'm like, doesn't that violate HIPAA? Like, isn't that
it violates so many things? You know, me and my grandmother were talking about this, you know, earlier today. She's a retired entrepreneur and worked for the government. And she started calling off policies left and right. And I said, you know what, we know this, but there are still loopholes also in these policies because we have a lack of accountability. And so as we focus on mothers who are battling the pandemic and also battling these grave inequities that we were just mentioning in our hot topics, we're excited to have our sisters on today from We the Motherhood. And as they prepare to come on, we're going to let each of them tell us who they are and the work that they're doing. But we definitely want to get their feedback on this conversation and really the tragedy of this all, that Black mothers are putting their children in the hands of teachers, educational leaders, you know, really hoping that school board members are creating policies that really protect their children and not target them. And to find out that there's an attack on their culture being taught, that they're being segregated because of their skin color, et cetera, and so forth. So at this time, we would love to bring on We the Motherhood as they join us for this Monday's episode of TDRS. And ladies, good morning. How are you all doing as you come on? I'm so excited to see all of your faces, my sisters. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon from the East Coast.
Yes, all right, East Coast.
So yeah, where's everybody at?
It's lunch break. We are in Washington, D.C.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah. Where are you guys?
Well, we are both in the city of Atlanta, and you know, Neo is always
we on East Coast time, y'all.
Okay, yeah, all right. East Coast time.
But you know, I have to put Atlanta out there. Chioma, if you want to go ahead and open us up, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll let each lady do that, and we're gonna go right into our conversation. So yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, thanks for having us. My name is Chioma Oru. I am a mother first in all things. I'm the founder and also principal consultant at She Born Free, and I'm a Bright Beam activist. So that is me, and of course, 1/4 of We the Motherhood. So I guess I'll pass it to Yolanda.
They always do that to me. So good morning, everyone. My name is Yolanda Corbett. I also, first and foremost, am a single mom of 3 young men. I kind of dibble-dabble in this work as a community organizer and sometimes a facilitator, aka educator for the community. And I'm just excited to be here. Oh, also 1/4 of We the Motherhood.
Go ahead, LaJoy.
Hey everybody, I'm LaJoy, another 1/4 of We the Motherhood. Full name is LaJoy Johnson Law, right here in Ward 8 of the great DC. Of course, I'm a mother first. My daughter is Isabria. She's 9. She's a child with multiple disabilities, so I'm definitely a disability and special education advocate. I'm a PhD student in public policy and administration. I work at DC's Parent Training Information Center, and I'm just happy to be here with y'all. And last but not least, we call her Mother Supreme, founder of We the Motherhood. Miss Michelle, you got it, Mother.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to TDRS for having us in this crossover opportunity. I am Michelle Parrish, and I am the last 4th of this puzzle known as We the Motherhood. I am a parent here in Washington, D.C. as well of 2 students who have special requirements when it comes to education, which is the glue that brings us mothers together. We are so mother, and we like to say, hey, mother. So as we get moving, I just want to give a hey, mother, and I want to thank all of our folks who are joining on to this crossover event. We really do appreciate the opportunity to link with you on this and to have this conversation and lend our voice to this dialogue, especially as we begin to engage and return to school in such a interestingly and turbulent set of circumstances.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to have you guys on.
Me too.
So let's go ahead and kick it off, guys. Motherhood is a major thing. Now, my sister's probably going to hit my hand for saying this, but as a young mother, we went back to school on last Monday, and unfortunately, my sister was unable to go back because she was exposed to COVID-19 by one of her coworkers, which actually took their whole department out. And she is a special education teacher. And so I really stayed connected with her to make sure she was well. And, you know, one of the things that I didn't realize in her having the quarantine was that she was separated from her daughter. And I thought about, you know, our opening question around the trauma of losing loved ones in the pandemic, mothers who lost their children to COVID-19 or other health-related illnesses, but also mothers who lost their children to violence in our community and the rise in crime and racial hatred that has been on a rampage in our country. And so I definitely want to get you all thoughts on the trauma that our communities are facing and the heaviness of that Black mothers are carrying.
Are you guys frozen?
It did seem like I think everybody was
frozen.
like, "Oh, this is a heavy question," and he is really laying it on.
I am listening. I am listening intently to that question, and it's interesting that you frame it that way. First of all, vote for Jason Allen. Okay, all right. Anyway, I want to, because I think you understand, Jason, the plight of our students, especially our Black and brown students. It's not unique to our Black children, but what we're looking at is also it's all brown, Black, brown. There's an issue in our sense of protection over our children. As you guys know or may not know, we are all mothers of children with disabilities. And so our children, find themselves at even more of a risk, if you will, because I'm not going to say disadvantage, but it puts us in a position as Black mothers to really have to, put on our armor and get out there and really battle every day. And to compound that, one of the things that we have noted as a unique fear for our children is the reality of this kind of violence between not only the community, but also the police, and the risks that our children face to be presented with this issue because of the risk of crisis in a public circumstance. And so not only are our children facing that in the street every day, not only are we as families facing that sort of backlash in and of ourselves, and our sense of protection gets us that angry Black mom stigma, right? But we are who we are, and we're going to fight for our children's truths and respect their truth every day. But at the same token, they are facing this right in the school, just based on the way you describe things. Every space that our children and families are walking into, we have found present some form of trauma. We are constantly carrying, and it's building, but also it's giving us that reason to fight. And so here we are doing what we do.
Ladies, anyone else want to chime in?
I just, here in DC, it's kind of like disturbing to know that it's business as usual, because we've seen a huge spike in the death of our youth here. We recently lost a 6-year-old to gun violence, and it's really kind of turned one of our neighborhoods upside down, where now the feds have got involved, and they kind of collected a lot of our young men in our community, some involved from just being on the avenue, some not, So we have a dual battle that's happening in the community that really is like under-resourced, undervalued, and still we have the narrative, okay, well, what's next? Nobody's addressing what's happening for families that have to buy into these systems as school starts, right? These are families that's been affected by this, but nobody is putting on the front line with how are schools going to help families navigate through these things. What does that mean for the families that are directly involved or community members, as far as being able to kind of get into the norm when we already are still dealing in a pandemic while trying to act like we're coming out of a pandemic? It's such a confusing time.
Right.
So, I don't see how any parent right now these days is gaining any kind of clarity towards like normalcy, and why it's not being treated as such by those that are in power. That's my point.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's just everywhere here in DC. It's like, it's the schools, it's out of school time, it's just the lack of resources, and it's just so draining in like primarily African American communities, which is Ward 7 and Ward 8. And that's where like a lot of the crime is happening. The crime isn't happening up in Georgetown, not with their tax dollars. It's happening over here east of the river. And so it's just really draining. And I think as a parent, you're just kind of like, what do you do? Like, what do you tell your kids? You know what I mean? Like, how do you help them navigate the racist system? Because it's not going anywhere. And it's so many different fights that we have to tackle at the same time. And I think that's the biggest challenge. It's like everything is happening at the same time. Like, just imagine I'm dealing with special education issues at school. I'm dealing with discrimination. And when I say discrimination, I mean like, again, like discrimination against our children's federal civil rights in out of school time and DPR. Okay. And out of school time. You know what I mean? And then also just trying to balance things here at home. And then on top of that, you have COVID. So it's just kind of like, fuck, what do you do?
No,
Wow.
that's real.
Yep.
So
And I mean,
what-
when you layer COVID on it, it just
It exasperates. It's exasperated. This COVID has exasperated the disparities that were already there.
yeah, Yolanda, what you over there laughing about?
Listen, we has a form of ADD, right? So we love
Oh, that's me.
to utilize
I totally
to
have it.
encourage each other. The life of like an advocate and speaking
I
out
think it
passion
helped
on
make me an
the door.
effective teacher.
We got several tabs open, so
He's just gonna let
I love it.
anonymous.
we got a lot of events going on at one time.
I want to ask, so like, and a lot of us, we grow up knowing the root causes, but for those who are watching for the first time, can you kind of explain to them like what the root causes of the continuation of violence in our community? Like what is it that's causing? Is clearly it's the lack of something, right?
man.
What part down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
Right.
I mean, like
I
how
was looking at Chioma too. I was like, I think Chioma should,
Dr.
start
O'Rourke
us off with this
can
one.
Dr. O'Rourke can give you a whole lesson. Starting at the ancestral root, right? And our middle passage. I mean, like it is a, and right now you have all of that history, right? Rooted in the way the fabric of this country is designed, on top of the fact that you have, a rapidly escalating technological environment that is just creating a whole new kind of operation, like mode of operation that also includes, highway frequencies, synthetic drugs. I mean, it is just like Chioma say, like, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? But I know that Chioma, you have a lot of like more academic, right? Because I can kind of go on a bunch of theories, right, based on things I see. But I know that Chioma has studied and researched this and has a good understanding of exactly what really happens in our community and the sort of dominoes that occur. And it all kind of starts right back at our voyage here through the Middle Passage.
Right. And so
Go.
Well, I was gonna just mention that. So my dad was y'all don't know, but my dad was in the military, and he was stationed at Bowling Air Force Base, right? And right there, right across over there, like near Anacostia. And so when I first moved to the DC area, and this is before my parents knew about the suburb life, right? So I went to Alicedale before it was a magnet school. Before it was a magnet school.
When was Alicedale ever not a magnet school?
I mean, I'm 38 now, so I'm 38. I'm 38 now, so I mean, you could probably count back when it was, but that was the first the school that I went to when we moved to the area, and I remember the way the building looked and the fact that we had to share books. I felt like we were going to math class and what was the attic of the school, it seemed at the time. And there was like always fights on the playground and stuff. But there was a kid that got stabbed right in front of the school. And Jason, I don't know if it still is, but Alicedale was a junior high school when I was a kid. I don't know if it's the same now, but imagine
it still is, yeah.
In middle school, like a middle schooler stabbing another middle schooler right in front of at the end of the school day. And so after, my friends showed up on the news and all of that. And at the time we were actually, we ended up moving to Fairfax County, Virginia, but I was still going to school. My parents didn't want to switch me in the middle school year. So I was going to school at Alicedale. Y'all, my parents snatched me out that school so fast. But the culture shock was so real because I went from Alicedale middle school, like 99%, like 98% Black, right? To living in Fairfax County, going to probably one of the best school districts in the country, very, very white. I mean, the culture shock was just unbelievable. They had everything. They even had lacrosse at the school. And I always tell people, like, if your school has lacrosse, then you going to a good school.
Right.
Well, what's, and that was just before we pivot to the next question, what I want to give you some context on, Nehemiah, is Washington is listening to this, is like, he tripping, because Alex Deal is by far one of the best schools in the district, right? And so if that is your experience at what is slated to be one of the best schools
now, right?
People,
yeah.
No, always have been. I graduated.
Really?
I was up in the 80s.
You went to Alice Deal as well?
I went to Woodrow Wilson, baby, Wilson Tigers, and so I know all the Alice Dillians.
Oh, I remember that school.
It was where you would have went if you didn't skip out there to them suburbs. Then you would have found a high school with lacrosse in the district. But I digress. It's one of the best schools. And so, for context, if that's your experience at what is known to be one of the top middle schools, right, in the District of Columbia, and you feel that way, imagine what we are battling every day when we are in wards 5, 7, and 8 every day in the trenches. Imagine what we're dealing with if you had that experience as what is slated to be one of the top middle schools in the district. Okay.
Let's see. No, that was good. I also want to put this out there and say that Mary Lynn in the city of Atlanta has lacrosse, and they were segregating Black kids. So, Black parents, we have to be mindful of schools that are going to do the right thing about our children and not just what they offer, because those offerings, a lot of times, there's something to just reel our kids in, one, for the money, and two, for the numbers. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, because I want to go to this very important point of reopening schools. It's back to school time. And Chioma, we'll kick off with you. What are two major challenges that parents are facing as we're reopening schools in the pandemic, still dealing with a lot of the same issues that were happening before? What are two things that you could definitely highlight that are challenges, and what can parents do to navigate through those challenges? We'll hear from all the ladies, but Chioma, we'll kick it off with you.
Yeah, my opinion is that the two key challenges facing families and children and youth right now are really rooted in healthcare, right? And that rooting in healthcare really has everything to do with access to education, and so it's the COVID, how they're actually going to deal with the physical, what the Delta variant and all these, the new strands and everything with the existing, protocols, public health policies. Are schools actually equipped to handle these challenges that are going to come up? Have they made the right investments? Have they thought out the right scenarios? And do they have, the right mindset to be able to support kids of varying needs, especially our medically fragile students? And then there is the other part of the behavioral health, right, aspect of it, which we kind of just touched on. But what you're talking about, what happened at Deal, your experience at Deal years ago. I mean, again, I just co-signing on Michelle. I went to Banneker High School, and a lot of the kids that came in Banneker, and I graduated in 97, so I'm a little bit older than you, Nehemiah. So Deal was still a good school back then. It was a feeder into that magnet high school. So historically, even the so-called good schools, so-called bad schools, every school is dealing with different levels of behavioral health supports that are going to be needed. Kids have gone through grief on many different levels, intimately, politically, just in the environment. People are dropping like flies everywhere. Kids are coming in from all, from different experiences. Are the schools equipped to support kids wherever they're at? And they're that commitment to doing more than just knee-jerk punishments, knee-jerk, regressive colonial policies that really have plagued us before COVID, but now we don't know what to expect. And I just, ask parents to be as prepared, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's my motto.
Hey, Jason, I know that we normally don't, occasionally we address some of the comments, but this comment really stuck out to me, the one that Tony Brooks just posted. And he said, Jason, sadly, this is an area where they cut funding. My mother was a full-time RN in the DC public school system. I mean, so that's what's happening. Is that happening during a pandemic?
This is happening everywhere.
That's why I
asked that question.
It's unbelievable. I can't believe it.
Imagine this is the
Yeah.
time when you start cutting down your school nurses. This is the time when you start cutting down your librarians. I mean, and the really bizarre thing for me is that just as a as a parent and also as an advocate in the community of other advocates, there is this sense that somehow this budget season, we're literally just coming out of our budget season, that somehow there were these victorious wins for schools and families. And I just don't, that's not what I'm feeling. That's not what I'm sensing. And all, all my senses are really alert right now, because I really feel that going back to school is going to be really, really, really testing. But again, for the system at large, but particularly for the families.
Yeah, that's Neil, I'm glad that you brought up that comment, because the Atlanta Student Coalition, which you all know I'm a special education teacher, and having lost a student, it hits so, I have to pause every time I say it because it just hits you so differently. Having lost a student in the pandemic who had a severe health condition, we learned that a lot of schools don't know what an individualized health plan is. They don't know that their students have severe health conditions. And to add on to that layer, school board members are not passing policies and not budgeting to ensure that we have full-time nurses. We made a partnership with the American Heart Association, and they said that it is very critical for schools that are educating Black and brown children to have a full-time nurse. Now, if we did this research and we studied this, then why are school board members not saying, you know what, why are we not protecting our children? And so I want to ask this, since Neil brought up this amazing comment from one of our viewers, what can we do as adults? Because I know what my students are doing. They're pushing for the school districts here in Metro Atlanta to mandate an audit of all individualized health plans, so that once they can show that the district has the data, they can go back in and say, now this is why you need to hire more nurses, more, et cetera, so forth right now. And so I wanted to see what you all as parents, as activists, would say about us reopening schools in the pandemic and not having enough nurses, and how can we use the funding to ensure that this is happening?
But Jason, before we get into that really quick, I just want to let folks know DC is not a state. So we have to start there. Wow. And so when we're talking about nurses and teachers and SPED and federal funding and DC funding, it's a little bit different because DC is not a state and we are under mayoral control. And so when we talk about our school board members, I just want everyone to realize our school board is the State Board of Education, but I'm just gonna be frank, they don't have a lot of real authority directly over the schools. And so in DC, it's literally like half our children are in DCPS, half our children are in charters. So that's the first thing. And then we have a state superintendent education agency called OSSI. But again, the mayor appoints the superintendent. Okay. Then you got the public charter school board on another island where they authorize and close schools, but there's no real oversight and accountability because they have their own autonomy. Then you have DCPS, which is over here, and the chancellor is appointed by the mayor. You know what I mean? And I know this is probably really like annoying, but I just want everyone to understand what we're dealing with here in DC. It's not like anywhere else.
It sounds messy.
It's very messy. It's very messy, and it affects how we reopen schools. It affects how we do things. Like there's no real, and all the schools are. So I'm gonna put it frank. All the schools are publicly funded. Okay. All of them get DC tax dollars. All of them get federal money. Right. And so we have the DC Council who's over here. Okay. Which is also supposed to provide checks and balances. And they have created some great legislation to help with the librarians and help with the nurses, but it's still on the mayor to fund it. Right. And then when she doesn't, they have to move it around. Okay. And so when you're dealing with all of these different issues, there's no real streamline of, okay, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to open schools? There needs to be accountability. There needs to be oversight. I don't give a damn if you are a DC public school, if you are a DC public charter school. Everybody knows Miss Law, LaJoy Johnson Law. I don't give a damn. If you are receiving DC tax dollars, if you are receiving federal monies, baby, special education, it's a requirement. Okay. Number two, all the schools should be, especially in the pandemic, all the schools should be operating under the same wavelength, and they're not. And so when you're talking about the biggest challenges, I'm sorry, Yolanda, I'm thinking about families like Yolanda who have children in DCPS and charter, and you just all over the place in this messy system.
God bless you, Yolanda.
You know, Yolanda.
That's a lot to keep up with, though.
It is. It's so annoying.
This our candidate, Jason. This our little State Board of Education candidate right here.
Right.
That's why she can drop it like that. But Yolanda made a comment in our little inside chat that accountability is DC's kryptonite, right?
It is.
And so it's so funny because we're watching the return to school, and every now and then we take some bets on what's going to happen next, right? And so, currently I'm looking at the situation, and my own children have been recently exposed to COVID through a very wide web, right? That it starts from the fact that you do have 70 plus LEAs, right? In a city without a state, no doubt. But that's the same thing that's happening across programming, is that you have this I'm calling it cross contamination risk, right? Wow. That when you send everybody back in full throttle, right? And this is why the accountability piece stood out to me, because this is now going to the lack of nurses, the lack of appropriate and well-funded program, and Chioma reminded me that, the failure is not on me for sending my kids to camp. The failure is on a city without any protocols toward accountability.
Yeah.
So if this is happening through summer programming, which the amount of students in one space is much smaller than what's going to be when they go back to school full time, unless they rethink this quickly, our children between the ages of 3 school age children, because we have plenty of pre-K families here in the district. Our children between that age and 12 who are not eligible for vaccination, even if they wanted to, right? Is at great risk. And we already know this. Children are super spreaders, and when you watch our children, especially in a disability, I watch my son's sensory requirements impact his ability to keep on a mask. And so I see other children struggle with that too, on top of the fact that, you get different messages that suggest that maybe you don't need to wear a mask. Maybe you do. People get comfortable because they start thinking they're in their bubble. But when you think about 70 plus LEAs, which means that you, like Yolanda has children in different schools, that is 3 different buckets of potential contamination. So as soon as one child has an exposure, that means that the entire house has an exposure, which means that if there are 30 students in the one child's classroom, another 30 in the other, and another 30, that is a rapid 90% exposure. And each one of those 90 people now go back home. And and so it is a situation that they have to, because of the variant and because it hasn't slowed down, this idea that everybody can go back full capacity, we took this money, so we got to make good on what the government asked us to do. It has to change, and it needs to change quickly, or else all of our children's lives are at stake. And families like ours who really need those resources for special education, right? Like I really need my son to get all of his AT support services and all of his OT support services. But is it worth his life? Right.
Yeah, no.
And is there a way for them to prioritize what my son needs academically over whatever image they want to present? And so this is what our families need to really grapple with as we continue to think about how do we return to school and what do we advocate for at this point, right? What do we advocate for at this point, and what is our real fight when we out here? Like, what do we really needed to say to the schools about our children's risk of real health disparities? It's a real thing, and you can see how quickly and how rapidly expanding it will be within weeks of a return to school here in the district. Because not only that, our per capita volume per people, right? We're a little tiny city with millions of people. Like this little city is bigger than Vermont, right?
It's like over 700,000 people here.
So imagine, so that's just something too.
So can we kick this to Yolanda real fast? And the reason why I want to go to her is because we know that you're a community organizer. So are there parents organizing on the ground, like trying to hold the city school district? I don't know what y'all got there. Accountable, holding all who do something accountable?
Well, we have several different, it's like, to be honest, DC is on fire. Because like we got so many different issues that need to be addressed all at one time. that it's kind of hard to galvanize a group of parents against one issue. Education is the hot topic because school is opening now.
Yeah.
But then we also haven't found solutions for families who are dealing with housing crisis. Like we have ABC and they're telling them we have all of this funding, yet nobody has yet, myself included, received a phone call saying, okay, we're walking you through the process of successfully not being evicted. There's that part. But nobody's talking about that, except for we have a coalition called Cancel the Rent DC that galvanizes together to be able to. Sorry, we parent in real time here, so I have my co-host.
That part.
Yeah, that's totally great. That's good. We love that. Keep going.
And then we do have this issue where now we have parents like ourselves who have children that have diverse needs that's going unheard. It's like a muted conversation, and so then parents like us have to get together and figure out how can we galvanize and still also address all of these general crises that we're having. So I mean, it's definitely a progression of action on the parenting end to try to put out some of these small fires, but it's not catching up to the steamrolling that's happening on people who already decided that the money has more value than the people.
Oh yeah, they've always made those decisions, which is why we need to make sure we have politicians don't like accountability, especially if they're not going in to serve the people. So I want to stay in this area though and ask you guys, Black mothers, Black women, Black people are on the forefront of just about every fight, whether it's CRT, reopening schools safely, the economic crisis, the renters crisis, the health crisis, the economic disparities and how people are getting paid in, various fields. Black women are on the forefronts everywhere for voting. I could go on and on, but I want to bring us to this point of creating a balance. How do you all create a balance in battling all of these things that we're collectively facing, and what would you share with our audience?
Well, full disclosure, I am not balanced. I don't know how one can be. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is so much happening, and mother is a unique identity. Yet, as in my pre-mothering, and it shows up now because that's just part of who I am. Like, I mean, I am a warrior, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm born for the fight. And sometimes that really goes in the wrong direction, in the sense that we need balance. We do need balance. We need mastery. We have to be able to create these things, if not just for ourselves, for our children, because they're watching and they're learning and they're growing up under us. I think, for me, part of in the constant effort to achieve some semblance of being able to fight and, take care of myself, take care of just being a human being and being a woman, and a mother and an entrepreneur and a fighter and all these things. I think that, I try to create a practice of wellness. And this is actually, to the first question you just asked about, like, we talked about the COVID side, but my also concern and worry is that on the behavioral health side, a lot of the fears, a lot of the anger, a lot of the pain, a lot of the frustration, a lot of all that charged energy is going to spill into, our daily practices with all the things we were doing before COVID. The teacher's going to feel it. They're going to snap on the kids. The administrator is going to feel it, and they're going to hand down on the parent. The parent's going to feel it, and the parent's going to go right there, right? Like, there's just all this toxic energy that we are, I think we're cultivating. And when the boiling pot is going to pop, the lid is going to pop. And I hope that when it does pop, we really do have processes in place. I know we don't. Let me just say that. As much as I'm very much committed to school-based behavioral health, as much as I'm created to the process and the politics and the policies that create healthy steps for our kids, we know that these things are the most underinvested things in the system. And the knee jerk to suspend, to expel, to restrain, to seclude is always there. to bring in the police when we're talking about defunding, to really isolate parents and really create this negative tension between peers and the teacher-parent relationship, administrator-parent relationship. These are peer relationships. And so for me, my personal work is to try and not knee-jerk, right? Not react, even if I'm probed and triggered, right? Because when I say I'm a warrior, that's all these years of fighting without a target. I'm hoping that in this moment that the target is, listen, I'm in it for the long haul. So you can do all this imbalanced, childish little things, but I'm only responsible for how I respond. I'm only responsible for what I do. If we organize, I'm only responsible for what's happening in my body. And I don't judge myself for my imperfect moments. And I encourage other people to not also judge themselves for their imperfect moments, but always come back to the table to heal and move it forward, because our children not only are watching, they need us to do this personal work to create systems that reflect that level of emotional intelligence.
I love that.
Jason, I hope you got all, we need a clip of that so we can just circle that around social media, because you just
that was amazing.
Oh, you see nothing.
I'm going back and just listening to that whole,
That
you
is
know,
so
when we
true.
broadcast, when we broadcast We the Motherhood, we go for like 2 hours. So imagine this mother gets the mic, baby, and that thing drops every time. Every time. Nobody can follow up Chioma.
You know, the thing is like the second Jason asked that question of y'all, I was thinking, like, what Black woman do I know that is balanced?
That's a good question.
And I don't know.
Why do you need to be?
I think Simone Biles decided to balance herself out. She was just at her wit. She was like, I'm balancing. I don't care what's going on.
She said, I'm out. And
she
did a good race,
her.
And look at the response for her. You know what I mean?
She
Look at the response when we do take care of ourselves. When we put ourselves
She is balanced. You know, she is balanced because she knew, she could see it. And I think that the absence of balance, like Chioma is balanced. She is balanced because she gets it done. But it's not easy to balance it and to put in perspective your motherhoodness, your womanness, your entrepreneurness, and your fighter, right? And when you are called, right, to do all these things, especially the work that we are called to do in the community, it is no mistake that each of us are in the positions that we in, and that what we decided to do was fight, right? Wow. And not just for our own households, but for the households of others, right? It is by no mistake that we even have the energy or wherewithal to figure that out. And we can't stop thinking about it no matter what. And everything that happens to one of our families turns to an action. Right? Everything,
that part.
Right? But it presents us with unequivocal evidence, right? That these things occur because it is our truth and we know it to be true. So it's not anecdotal, right? It's not what we heard, it's what we know, right? And it's what we collectively know. And so, you know, so these types of things, you know, when we look at all this stuff that's going on collectively, this is the collective and what we have learned. And our balance is by being this 4-quad thing, right? That's how we found our balances, because what we collectively came to understand is that we could not do it alone. And that you need to be able to lean somewhere, right? Some group chat, something out there, you need to be able to laugh. This is why you saw all this sidebar chatter in the private chat. Yeah. This is how we hold each other up. This is how we hold each other up. And this is how we ensure that greatness comes out. But we are never going to stop, right? And so we might as well just lock arms and hold each other down, because at no matter of, if Chioma gets tired, the rest of us are up. You know, if I get tired, the rest of them are up. You see how that works? And so it is something, you know, it is what it is.
Hey. Y'all brought the strength with the strength of y'all of our ancestors, right? Because had it not been for a Black woman, we wouldn't even be having this broadcast right now, because we wouldn't survive the 400 years. So kudos, and I mean kudos ain't even a word to like use. You know, there's a reverence that we must have for Black mothers that is just, you know, there's no word to describe, you know, how thankful and grateful I am for my own mom and her strength, and my great grandmother and great and so on and so forth. I want to get a little personal. I know we only have like 6 minutes left. Have y'all ever, so speaking of balance, whether on a Zoom call that's just private for y'all, do y'all ever have y'all's like cry out sessions where y'all just be like so stressed and y'all just be helping lift each other up? Like, can we talk about that? Because I just want people to know that you can be vulnerable with this.
When do we not? When do
Right.
we not?
We were gonna do it this weekend if COVID didn't,
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. We were gonna do it on Saturday, and so because that's what we do.
That's what
And,
we do.
and I gotta tell you
that?
that what I find what happened, how we even came together was I knew that I was not alone in my struggle, right? And that I cried my tears alone, and I knew that I couldn't be the only one. And LaJoy and I have an affiliation through a public coordinating council, and I said, LaJoy, do you know anybody? We should just talk about this, right? And what we found, and through the collective, we had several private Zooms that we did broadcast them live, but the very first one we got together and we said, let's just do it. And there were about 30 participants on this Zoom, and it went for 3 hours. And it was a legitimate watershed moment. And we went monthly from there. And that's how We the Motherhood became what it is that what we found out was that we needed those watershed moments and that they wouldn't stop. And every story that was shared just created this this sad but real understanding of the reality of our mothers, and not just our mothers in the disability community, but our Black mothers at large. Yeah. And that we needed that space, right? Because the one thing that we need to make sure our mothers know is that they're not alone. They ain't the only one. Their kid ain't the only one who broke a window at the school. And that, their kid is not the only one who they had to lock down the classroom for, and that it's not your fault, right? Because that's the number one thing that we do. We take it in and say, gosh, what could I be doing different? I had my kids after 40. Oh my God, was I too old? Right. And so, like all these things. And when you go into these medical environments, and this is why Chioma always starts with, sort of like healthcare as the premise, because when you go in and you say, I think this is happening, they ask you about you, mother. What about you? Did you drink? Did you carry? Did you do this? Do you have toxic? Do you whatever? Do you sleep? They ask you about you. Right. They don't act, so they put it back in your court, and it makes you want to carry it, but at the end of the day, we are going to carry it, and we're going to keep pressing because we are so mother. Hello. But at the end of the day, what we found is that we can't do it alone, and we shouldn't do it alone. And it is invaluable to be able to produce support for one another that gives you that protected space, that safe space, that person you can call, because I could call any one of these ladies and tell them anything.
Oh, I love that.
Anything.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, like anything. And it's been amazing. And so we know that there's power in the collective, and Black women have been using collective motherhood as a premise to protect our communities and our families for generations. Generations. And if you go back to one of our We the Motherhood segments about the Black mother, you will find out that it is historic in our diaspora. So, and because Dr. Chioma broke that down too. So, just give you some context on why we're here, and how we're here, and how we want to show up in the community as a collective. And what we seek to do every day is be there for our families, our mothers, and our children.
What days? So what day and time can folks find y'all?
We are coming back in September. I need to talk to a class and get our back to school schedule together. But we normally broadcast on approximately the first Friday of the month at 7 p.m.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying we'll have a schedule soon.
So a class. A class is one of the producers of the show. A class. I know you can't pop on the screen or nothing like that. Can you please make sure we stream these mothers to the Black Wall Street Times? Because I'm not even a mom, right? But I'm feeling this energy and empowered, and I know that there's so many other Black women that could benefit from just listening to y'all speak.
Most definitely.
Ashe.
We the Motherhood. We got a couple of seconds before we close out, and definitely want to get your last thoughts. Maybe a best practice to hold school leaders accountable that we can leave to the people that are watching, or ways that they can support. So we'll definitely kick it over to you guys so that we can get those best practices and your last thoughts.
LaJoy?
I knew you were going to do that.
I mean, you got the list.
Never stop telling your story. You can't stop. You have to keep going. And when you feel like you can't go anymore, you call We the Motherhood. And so we love y'all, but just don't just share your story. Like somebody needs to hear it. Don't stop.
Love that.
Right. I'm gonna kick it to Dr. Oru.
I think so. I'm really bad at being brief, but my last thoughts are just, I was just in my mind. Sometimes I think in song, and for those old Deltas that did it old school, we know that the road is rough, and we will never stop until we make it all way up to the top. So I know that the road is rough, and part of resilience is just keeping it going. And I know that, and it's no relish in the roughness of the road, but we were born wherever we are in mucky waters, and I just appreciate the constant fight that really is a unifier in Blackness, and that is what our ancestors have done, and we must, even as things are going to get really muckier and muckier and muckier, but our job is to stay at it, because there's light, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I believe we will get to a light at this particular juncture.
Love that.
So I'm past it. Yes, Yolanda.
My last thoughts are always rooted in organizing. The power starts with you and ends with you. Just because they become the power to be, the power was given by us as the people. So when you feel like that you're the only one that's dealing with these issues, if you talk to some of the other people that's in that same boat with you, you might find that you'll find a group that can change some things, and just continue to hold these people accountable for what they're supposed to do. Like I said in our personal chat, in DC, accountability is the kryptonite, and that's the battle that we have to face here. Letting people know, yes, we gave you that power, but we're watching you still, and we could take it away just as well as we gave it. So I just want to give that encouragement to anybody that feels like they're alone out here. Join the collective and get it moving and shaking.
Love that.
I'll just say, drink your water and keep that clarity and focus, because I think the main thing that LaJoy said is the most powerful thing, which is keep using your voice, sharing your stories, and understanding that you have power, regardless of where you stand. If you have a child in the public schools, you are invested and you have a role in a position, and nobody can tell you that your truth isn't true. And so it is important that you continue to push it, and do not let anyone make you back down, because it is our responsibility to hold them accountable. And what, as organizers come out and they start organizing, get with it and be a part of the solution and lend your voice to the fight, because that's what we need. We need parents to join on and be a part of it and be ready to do the work, because we can't do it alone. And so, we invite you to join on our various missions. We got a lot of them, but was we ready to take on everything?
I love it.
Everything.
Such a powerful conversation.
And they're not ready.
I don't think they're ever going to be ready. I don't think they're ever going to be ready. Brother Neo, you have anything that you want to close us out with?
Well, I mean, my takeaways, the resilience is very prevalent for sure. And then also, this sense of understanding what the collective motherhood looks like. Wow. Like, I think that is something that every sister that is watching this program, it should be taking away, is that, and brothers too, like, having a collectiveness, there's healing, there's strength, there's refuge in numbers. And so, we should definitely be focusing on that, especially during the continued pandemic, because it's definitely not over yet.
Love that. I'll just say that I'm honored to have had We the Motherhood on for the show that I did a lot of the administrative work for, of course, because the special education teacher in me wanted to make sure that this conversation was uplifted. And so my final thoughts would be tune in to Atlanta. Check us out, atlanta.org. Our new show, That Way, will be back on tomorrow at 6 p.m. If you have not liked, shared the Allen for School Board page, definitely go ahead and do that. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to collaborate with We the Motherhood and bringing together parents who have exceptional learners, because this is definitely our season and the time to make sure that our children are no longer forgotten about, overlooked, and forgotten. So I just want to definitely make sure that for anyone tuning in today, make sure that you hold your school systems accountable for all children, but especially those exceptional learners that they are failing. So With that, guys, thank you so much for being on. Please make sure you like and share this conversation out with as many people as possible. And I tell you, those supporters of We the Motherhood, they lit the comments up. So I'm looking forward to seeing more, guys. And thank you all so much. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, 12 noon, TDRS.
Bye, you guys.
Peace
Thank
and
you.
love, everyone.